Som Swakom. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining Let's Chat today. We're lucky because we have a very special guest. Her name is Sithyka Meach, and she's Meach, is that right? Sithyka Meach. And she is the one and only Cambodian female graduate of a U.S. military academy. So today we're going to talk to her about her journey going to the United States to WestPoint, and she'll tell us what it was like. Throughout this year, the United States Embassy is celebrating the 70th anniversary of diplomatic relations between Cambodia and the United States. And throughout this year, we're highlighting different aspects. And Sithyka, in many ways, represents many different aspects of the relationship between our two countries. Since she studied at one of our military academies, but she has experience in both countries and is one of the many people bridging the gaps between our two cultures. So hello, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Yeah, so can you just first of all tell us about the U.S. Military Academy, why you went there, and any background information you want to tell us about yourself?
Okay, so I guess the best way to start this out is to explain what the United States Military Academy is. It's an institution, it's the premier institution actually, where civilians go in to get a full education. You graduate with a bachelor's degree of science, but you also graduate with a degree in military leadership, basically. And it basically is an academy because it is comprehensive and involves your education as well as your personal development all in there.
And I know a lot of Americans, we call it WestPoint, not the U.S. Military Academy, right? And where is it located? Is it in the West or?
So I believe, don't come at me, use my graduates, but I believe that it is a point that points west because it was a strategic military advantage for the United States. This is against the struggle with the British. So actually the academy is older than the United States itself.
Oh, that's interesting. But it's not in the west of America, it's in New York, right?
Yes, it's in New York. So it's in the east of America, upstate New York.
So how did you end up going to university there?
I ended up going there through application and the whole process. But as far as personal motivations and inspirations, to be honest with you, now that I'm older and a little wiser, it was probably out of a little bit of a rebellion spirit.
Okay.
A little bit of a spirit to show my parents, show society that girls can do everything that guys can do. But of course, naive, silly young me, girls can do way more than guys can do. So
I'll agree with that. That's true. So let me ask, when you went there to West Point, how many women to men? What's the ratio there? Is it mostly men, or are there a lot of women there?
No, it's definitely mostly men. As in all military sector, I think the ratio of female to male at the time of my class was 18% was female, and that's to include foreign females as well. That 18%. Okay.
And so what was it like when you first arrived there?
I think entering into a military academy at any point in time is a culture shock. It's a culture shock for civilians going into a military world. You have to learn and talk, breathe, sleep, and eat the military way. But it was also a different shock for me as I was a foreign cadet going into the United States Military Academy.
Have you ever been to the United States before?
I have.
Okay.
I have. My father was a Fulbright graduate in New York as well, so I went when I was 5 and returned when I was 7. But that was my extensive living there.
Yeah. And so what was the biggest shock for you when you first arrived at West Point?
Again, I think it was the military culture just as much as the cultural shock. So there were some things that I can't remember now, but I didn't pronounce the correct way. And you're asked to lead, you're asked to shout cadences or commands, and sometimes my foreign accent would come out in my commands, and therefore was made fun of a little bit. And that was sometimes a struggle to make people understand, no, this is what I meant, even though they all knew exactly what you meant. They just wanted to make fun of you for being the foreign kid.
And so did that make it harder for you to adjust? I mean, how did you react to that?
Well, the beauty of WestPoint is that the whole academy is designed to be an obstacle. The whole program is to develop and mold young individuals and leaders through giving them the hardest time they've ever experienced in their life. Of course, under a controlled environment where they're able to deal with the consequences of those. For example, if you physically push yourself too much, there's a hospital to take care of you. If you mentally are overwhelmed, there's a psychiatrist to talk you through. But the whole idea is that WestPoint throws all these obstacles and challenges at you, and you handle and deal with them and come out at the end a better person. And that's the whole idea. So to be honest, all of that was just a little bit of an extra onto it, but it wasn't anything different because everyone else was experiencing some sort of challenges, some sort of special obstacle that they've never experienced in their life either.
Just talking a little bit more about the military culture, I guess. You didn't, like when you were growing up, did you want to join the military? Was this a lifelong dream, or is it just something you came to later?
To be honest with you, this was never a lifelong dream. But I knew I had tendencies towards characters and values that the military embodies. And for that reason, it attracted me to the sector, mainly because I like the physical challenge that comes with joining the military. I like the camaraderie, the values of duty to country, and the beauty that it was a service to something more than yourself. And all that had drawn me to it before I even thought, oh, it's the military. It was basically the values that drew me to that.
You mentioned the physical challenges.
Oh, yes.
I'm just curious, as somebody who has not been through that, what are the physical challenges and what are some of the things they put you through, especially at the beginning where they're training you?
Well, the physical challenges at WestPoint are designed to develop your mental capability as well, in a way where they think that your body is driven by your determination and your mind, which I strongly believe is connected too. But the physical challenges, mainly for me as a female, of course, was I have to carry the same heavy rucks that the men had to carry.
And a ruck is like a big backpack?
Yeah, a big military backpack. The men had to carry the same amount, and so did I. And
how much did that weigh? Do you know?
I think it was, so when we loaded it up, it was 35 to 40 pounds. And everybody had to carry that for the 8-mile ruck, or whatever, how long we were doing.
And is that just a march, the 8 miles?
Yes, the march and a run too, and a slight run too, if it was
the whole time with your
backpack. With your backpack.
Okay.
And there were certain stuff like climbing up ladders or climbing up buildings where I'm physically shorter than a lot of people. Yeah. So it was more of a challenge for me to find out how to use my smaller frame to accomplish the same task that my bigger peers were doing with their bigger frame.
I just think about like the movies, right? That's how a lot of us know about the U.S. military, right? And so like even in like Captain Marvel, was a movie that came out last year, and in that movie she's climbing the big rope and she falls down and the men are yelling at her. Is that kind of accurate?
In the fact that there are definitely people yelling at you, there might not just be men. There's cadres that are female too, screaming at you to do better. But yeah, it's not too different from the fact that there's definitely failures. Your first attempt is always usually a failure. In fact, I ended up in the hospital 3 or 4 times because my body gave up on me. But that didn't mean that you stop. That just means you come back and you try and get stronger at it. And there were definitely times where I failed obstacle courses because it was too high for me. I couldn't grab at it. but somehow I learned how to jump higher, and somehow I learned how to get stronger, because I do believe that there is a reason to that madness of philosophy, where your mind drives your physical capabilities. And I think that philosophy allows people to achieve more than they mentally think they can.
Yeah, that's really interesting and inspiring, actually. So as you were doing these grueling physical things, you mentioned that for the women it could be tougher because you had to carry the same weight, the height difference. Did you talk to the other women? Is there camaraderie among the women, or not really?
No, of course. And I think through, I tell this to my students today, is that through hardship builds really strong bonds. And so a lot of the females that we bind together to assist each other mentally and spiritually in achieving everything there, we're still very good friends with. Two of them came to my wedding in Cambodia as my bridesmaids, nice. So we continue to communicate into the future because I think of that hardship that we went through together.
Can you give us a sense of what a typical day is at WestPoint, like especially your first year? Because I think a lot of us know what a university life is like, right? Maybe you sleep in, you drive your moto to class, and then you go to a coffee shop. I imagine it's kind of different at WestPoint. So maybe you could tell us what a typical day is like?
Yeah, sure. So a typical day at WestPoint is central within the barracks. You sleep, you eat, you do all your activities in the barracks, you even go to class in the barracks. Now, there's just the different academic sections of the barracks, the military institution that is WestPoint. So your day will usually start up with some sort of physical training. You will definitely almost always start out with physical training at either 4 or 5 in the morning.
4 or 5 a.m.
Yes.
Okay, that's early.
And you will have your breakfast, and in a military type formation at around 7:30, and you will be in class by 8 or 8:30, usually depending on the academic schedule.
Sorry, I wanted to ask, the barracks, are they divided by gender? So you have women and men?
No, so you're divided by companies, as they call them. So in the military, you're divided by battalions, companies, and there's females and males in the companies. But the rooms are divided by genders. Okay. So you share a room solely with the same gender.
And how many people in one room?
I had anywhere from 2 to 4.
Okay.
So my whole time there, it alternated.
And then breakfast, you go with your company?
Yes,
together?
Breakfast, you go with your company. So you basically do everything with your company. For the most part, if you don't play a special sport like football or soccer, you would normally do physical training with your company. But if you played a special collegiate sport, then you will definitely go train your special sport in the morning with your own team.
And then what about classes? Do you go to classes with your company, or do you split?
So classes are more controlled by the academic side. So classes are controlled by academia, basically, whereas the military and your lifestyle is controlled by military leadership. And academia sometimes have civilian professors. They sometimes have military professors, but it's divided through your major. So I took up international comparative legal studies, which is basically the law equivalent of undergraduate there. And those classes and the way they're structured is controlled by the civilians or whoever is in charge of the academic department.
So how many majors? Is it like a regular university where they have many different majors?
There's a lot of majors, but the specialty at most military institution is science. Okay. So even so, your engineerings, your chemistry, whatever your physics, those are where there's the better and more extensive development.
So they may not have like philosophy or English literature? Or?
They do, actually. They
really?
They do.
Okay.
They do have philosophies, English literature. You can even major in Arabic.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes.
That's cool.
Yes, it's very supportive to everyone's academic interests.
That's really interesting. I didn't know that.
It's a university as well as a military institute.
So maybe can you tell us a little bit about the special traditions at WestPoint? As an American, I know about the football team, and I know that's a big part. There's this thing called the Army-Navy game, which is a big deal.
A rivalry.
A rivalry between the two football teams. But what other traditions are there that outsiders may not really know about?
Let's see. There's where to begin. Traditions basically is the definition of WestPoint. Everything they do there is out of tradition, basically. We wear these ridiculous heavy coats during the winter called long grays because they're tradition. And, adapting to modern times is a little difficult when tradition is so highly treasured. I'm kidding. Don't.
No. But actually, I have a question on that. Can you have cell phones?
Yes, you can. You can. But, of course, the use of it is controlled by proper use where you can't bring them to class. You can't.
PT, you can't bring them
to
you
can't bring them to PT.
So basically only in the barracks, probably?
Basically, and used on your own time. So in the barracks doesn't mean it's always your own time. It could be what we call military development time. So you learn to do military stuff, like hold your bed the right way. But
shine your shoes way.
But okay, beyond that, learning how to, if you have a chunk of time that's free, they will usually put in military development, which is learning weapons. Learning how to use weapon grades, learning how to clean them, and even military tactics, all of that is put in at your own, where you think is your own time in college, usually.
So how tough is it to make it through it? Because I think for an outsider, especially that first summer or that first year looks really tough. But how grueling is it? I mean, can most people do it, you think, or does it take something special?
No. See, that's, I think, is what I want everyone to understand is I was able to make it through the academy not because I was special. It's the program at the academy is special. And the program there, you will not fail if you do not choose to fail. So there's a heavy focus on your own determination and your own grit for success. So there is no way you will fail if you haven't decided that you will fail. So as far as grueling, yes, it takes dedication. Nothing that is worth having or worth calling an accomplishment doesn't take a grueling effort. But it doesn't take a superhuman, super clever, super amazing person to go through the academy. It just takes a really dedicated person. And I think everyone has that dedication in them, given the right mindset, the right frame of mind, and the right environment. And you are able to apply that determination. I think anyone, honestly, I'm a firm believer that anyone can make it through the academy if they choose to make it.
If you don't mind me asking, did you ever think about giving up?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then
I will challenge you to find one WestPoint grad that never thought about giving up, that never thought about, I'm done with this. I'm going. I will challenge you.
And then what kept you going?
So a little bit, what kept me going was maybe the fact that I was representing more than myself. I was representing Cambodia on the world stage. So the WestPoint, the academy didn't only see me as Sithyka Meach, they saw me as Sithyka Meach, the female cadet from Cambodia. So if I fail, I wasn't just failing my name, my last name, I was also failing Cambodia. So that thought definitely, no matter how many times I went to bed saying, I'm done, I'm going to go to my military leadership and tell them I'm going to go, I'm done. Or if I'm in the hospital and I'm in pain, I'm like, I'm done. But then I wake up the next day thinking, I can't do this. I have to continue because I represent more than just myself now.
That's interesting. Did you know the other Cambodians who had been to WestPoint or the other military academies before you went?
No, actually, I did not. And my senior, who had graduated before me, General Manette, had reached out to me when I was midway to see how I was doing. But no, I had not met anyone or had known anyone before going there.
And when you were there any other Cambodians?
No, when I was there was no other Cambodians.
So you were really representing Cambodia.
I was really representing Cambodians.
Okay. And speaking of that, I know with a lot of exchange programs that we do, We try to include a cultural element, so we try to have Cambodians teach Americans about Cambodian culture, explain it. Did you ever get a chance to give presentations on Cambodia or do a Cambodian dance or anything like that?
Definitely not perform because that's not my forte, but I was definitely almost in a way an ambassador there. American cadets and even other international cadets were very curious, and I always gave them a little demonstration, a little presentation about the country, about the beauty of the country, because mainly when people hear Cambodia, they think of the past, they think of the negativity that's been in the past. But it was good because it was an opportunity for me to explain about the beauty that also exists, despite maybe 4 or 5 years of unfortunate events in past. Okay, to call it unfortunate maybe downplays it a little bit, but because of one point in history doesn't negate all the beauty that exists even before that.
Right.
So it was a great opportunity for me to constantly tell people, present to them, show them the beauty that was beyond those 4 or 5 years that everyone else sees currently outside of Cambodia.
Yeah, that's great. And actually, that's exactly why we do a lot of our exchange programs, so that not just Cambodians can learn about the United States, but so that Americans can know more about Cambodia, especially more than just that small period of history. We probably need to wrap up in a minute, but I want to ask you, you're the only Cambodian woman that's gone to a military academy in the United States.
Yes.
So what would you say to any young women that are watching this who never thought about applying or might be interested now? What would you say to them, and what would you like to see come from this?
Here's what I would like to say is, I think as females, we put ourselves in boxes with these expectations of what we should do, what we shouldn't do. And I think the big important part is to follow your interests, is to follow what you think is useful and beneficial for yourself. So in that case, I would say go for it. If you're interested or even remotely curious about it, find out more information about it. Talk to people. Explain, have these conversations with your family to see how they feel, to sort of bring them around to your side a little bit too. Because you're never going to know if your family supports you or not if you don't voice what your interests are. If you think if you put yourself in a box, then you're never going to be able to fulfill these areas that interest you professionally and personally as well.
Right. Yeah, that's good. And I want to remind all of our viewers that we regularly update when we are recruiting for the U.S. military academies on our website and Facebook. So please don't ever hesitate to reach out to us if you're interested in learning more. So Sithyka, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having
Akun
me.
Charan, yeah. It was really interesting and inspiring, and I hope that our viewers are inspired too by your journey, and that we will have more young Cambodian women go to the U.S. military academies. So thank you.
Thank you.
Akun Charan.